Hello there, my name is Salim Javed and I am an associate professor at the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication at Lingia's Lalita Devi Institute of Management and Sciences. We have been talking about the development of cinema through a series called Understanding Cinema, where we have talked about that how cinema has grew from the very nascent stage to the cinema as we know it. We have, through different videos, through different episodes, we've witnessed that how cinema has grown, how it came to India, how it was picked up initially in India, how gradually we moved to talkies, and then how gradually we moved to golden era and other different stages. There were some ages which created wonderful cinema, and there were some decades which were not up to the mark, but interesting when it was useful, and when it was supposedly not so useful, it always led to interesting visual changes. Now we through our videos we have talked a lot about the cinema, but now let's talk about something very interesting which I promised to talk about in one of my videos. If you remember, when we were talking about corporatization and globalization, there was a very interesting term called lackluster content, and I said that it is something which audience is not liking films anymore, they are very bored with the film and other similar things. And during that lecture I said that we will talk about it. Now I was going through a lot of study material, and there is where I decide that sometime it becomes really interesting and important to know what is what is the basic of any discipline. Now when you say that we need, or our content is a lackluster content, what does it mean? What understanding does it take to call something as lackluster? Do we know whether something is called good when we are saying something bad? So if we say that there is a lackluster content, so through this video let's understand how the basic unit of entertainment called script and plot works. Basically, visually, the basic unit is a shot. I mean, you must have read in your books. But when it comes to entertainment business, doesn't matter whichever stream you are catering for, it's the script which matters. And there are two similar terms called script and screenplay. I will be talking about both separately, but let's start something basic. And if I ask you that what are the components of making a good film, you will say, sir, it's director, it's producer, all the heads. Yes, they are absolutely fine. I am not denying that they are not important, but these are some basic components which are very, very essential for any film to become a good film, and we are doing it with the lackluster content also. Now, I am saying story. Okay, I have not written the screenplay here. I have written story. That story is required. Second is production design. The third is color. Fourth is cinematography. Fifth is editing. Sixth is sound design, and seventh is music. Now there are a lot of places where people do not distinguish between sound design and music. I mean, a commoner and somebody who just simply enjoys cinema or entertainment content, for them sound design and music can be one single department. But those who are professional, they know that these are two specific different domain. Now in this video, we will be talking about the first component, and gradually we will talk about other components also, which is production design, color, cinematography, editing, sound design, music. But let's understand what story is, and story will give birth to a lot of other topics also. It will give, in this video will be talking about story, I will be talking about plot. To understand these two things, you need to understand motivation and conflict also, which I'll pick up in some other video. Then we will have to understand what is a screenplay and what is the difference between script and a screenplay. What it takes to write. Can we do some interesting exercise while staying connected with each other? So all these things. So let's start with the first and very interesting topic called story. Now, there is very interesting proposition here that it says that humans have been trying to record or store their observation for later use since the beginning of the time. In the absence of tool, we restored the making, we restored to making cave paintings, images from stones, and eventually metal when it was discovered to satisfy our craving. So in a sense, telling stories predates the development of language. There are no limits to stories. They blow and fly wherever the wind takes them. Now understand what it says. It says that doesn't matter whether we were able to speak or not, doesn't matter we were able to have this particular language or Hindi or English or Marathi or some specific language, whether we had language or not, whether we had tools or not, whether we had resources or not, whether we had means to do things or not. But without having anything, we were itching images on the cave wall. There are a lot of examples now. There are a lot of caves where you see Luxembourg is just one of the examples where it is really some few centuries old. So Luxembourg is one of the examples where we get to see these examples of cave painting. Now understand why these cave painting. I mean, suppose if let's take that Stone Age people, those who were, or some other age people, those who were carving, those who were etching images on the cave wall, what was the need to do that? That is the most important thing. I mean, cave painting is important, it is really important, it's an interesting artifact, it is a valuable artifact, but if somebody asks you, what is the need for those guys who were not able to read and write, still they are making stories on cave wall, what is the need? The need is to save it for posterity, for coming generation. I mean, now imagine the practicality of a cave painting. Now if you have seen cave paintings, they are basically that there are some people who have surrounded an animal, they are in action position and they are going to kill the animal, because that was the need of the hour at that point of time. Now you are drawing it in a cave so that you can help understand the young ones that this is how we are going to learn, this is how we are going to do when we'll be there in jungle hunting. Now you can't take a young boy or a girl to a hunting spot and tell them exactly on the spot when actually you are hunting that this is how hunting is done. That is too dangerous. So you bring back that experience, come to your cave, you paint that, you tell your young ones that this is how we will be trained. So this was technically a manual how to hunt. So there was a practical need, and that need, that need was also that how wonderfully we manage the hunting process. So it is basically to tell about my victory. It is also to tell about that this is what I did, this is how marvelously I finished the job. So the practical need of these visuals, when we did not know how to read and write, we were drawing, we were drawing images, we were, whatever means, limited means we had, we were conveying the story of our hunting process. So stories have lived. It doesn't matter whether we had means or doesn't matter whether we did not have means. They were living. Like there is a beautiful, if you remember that there is a beautiful line, कि पंछी नदिया पवन के झोंके कोई सरहद ना इन्हें रोके. Exactly, that is what stories are. They blow and fly wherever the wind takes them. So that is the need to tell the story. This is how stories, long before we were reading and writing, before we were speaking, stories were there. So they basically predates reading and writing. Now, story. Let's understand story. Now, this is one example which I have come up, that every day one sees a rainbow of colors, but each hue, color is called hue. So each hue is actually a mixture of several others. There are three primary colors, red, yellow, and blue. And when you combine them, there are three secondary colors, orange, green, and violet. And there are six other tertiary colors also. And you have primary, secondary, then you have tertiary, you mix black and white in them, and you have every imaginable discovered and not yet discovered kind of colors in the color palette. So in the same way, in the same way, you have stories also. There are limited stories which is based on ras. I mean, rasa in English it's called rasa, and in Hindi it's called ras, which we have studied in 6th, 7th or 8th. I remember in Hindi grammar book. They are the same, you know. So stories are like you have rainbow, which have got Vibgyor. If you remember, you and I have remember this formula Vibgyor, and it has got these many colors. So rainbow has got certain number of colors, but when you see it, it's white light, which then becomes in Vibgyor. In the same way, stories are same, but when you do plus minus in 9 rasas, like every story in the world will be made up of 9 rasas, which are mentioned in Bharatanatyam. They are as following. I mean, all the ras: Shringar ras, Hasya ras, Karun, Raudra, Veer, Bhayanak, Vibhats, Adbhut, Shant. All these things, if you remember, we have studied it. Like Hasya ras, if you remember, when I was young, there was a beautiful दोहा that I remember, मच्छर के भुजदंड उखाड़ूं, कच्चा तोड़ूं सूत, मुक्का मार बताशा फोड़ूं, ऐसा मैं राजपूत. So this is how, this is what was taught to us. Then Karun Ras was, हे खग हे मग मधुकर श्रेणी, तुम देखी सीता मृग नयनी. The Raudra is there. Courage is like something, छत्ता तेरे राज में धरती धक धक होए, जित जित घोड़ा मुख करे उत उत्फत्त होए. And fear had its own examples. Adbhut, Shant. Now all these things called love, laughter, compassion, anger, courage, fear, disgust, wonder, tranquility. You pick up any film in the world, and they are just a mere exhibition of all these emotions. Plus minus, they will keep on changing, because that's as I said, that unless there is not a combination of different emotions, how do you think that the story or the painting will look beautiful? Now if I may say so, that if there are only a handful of stories, like if there are 9 rasas, so there are limited stories, there is no doubt, it is absolutely right that there are limited stories, but how they are told will always make a difference. This is an example which I usually give in my class, that like everybody makes, like suppose if you are making a romantic film, it's a romantic film genre wise, but what is your interpretation of romance will make that film unique. There are 5 people together, they come together and they say, okay, all of us are making horror film. Fine, absolutely fine. Nobody has got patent on, horror film. But it is your interpretation of horror which will make the difference. It will make whether people will like it or people will not like it. Now, that is what is interesting. So, if there are, we have colors, and when we make some change in primary, secondary and tertiary colors, we have different kinds of colors. In the same way, there are 9 rasas, but the way you use them, will give a new color to every story. Now, cinema uses a story, and there is no doubt about it, which are fundamental to civilization. The ability to tell stories is fundamental to the development of any culture. Now, this line is really important, that these are, you call them folklore, you call them any sort of story, but these stories are really important. These stories actually connect people, and there has been a long tradition of storytellers in India. I'll talk about. I'll rather dedicate a very specific episode for that. The storytellers of India, and what techniques did they use? What was unique to us, and what was not unique to us? Like I give you an example. What is about uniqueness? It has just come to my. I just remember it. Now, what is unique? Suppose I was reading a few days back about an actor. He says that we are incapable of making film like Inception in India. Okay, big actor, very respectful in public domain. It's his opinion. He can say that. There's nothing right and wrong in that. He had an opinion. He expressed that. But I have a genuine complaint when it comes to a statement like this, that are we thoroughly aware of our system? Are we thoroughly aware how the story structures that through which we have created some of the best literary work in the world at our when we were at our prime? Like, I just give you an example. You find this example in Panchtantra also, and you find this example in Arabian Nights also. Okay, I am sure those people of my age, I'm not very sure about the young ones whether they have heard about this story or not. There was, I mean, people of my age must have heard a story like this, which I am going to tell you. कि एक राजा था, उसके दरबार में एक बहलिया आया. बहलिया is what do you call that? बहेलिया, what? आखेट जो करता था, बहेलिया, उसे बहेलिया कहते थे. एक राजा था, उसके दरबार में बहेलिया आया. उसके पास एक तोता था, वो तोता बोलता था. उस तोते ने एक कहानी सुनाई. उस तोते की कहानी में एक कछुआ था. कछुआ किसको एक राजा ने पकड़ लिया, तो राजा को उस कछुए ने एक कहानी सुनाई. उस कछुए की कहानी में एक राजकुमार था. Now understand what I am saying. I've just cut short the entire example. Otherwise, it is actually a very good and long example. Now, imagine that I am in today's time in the studio. I am telling you about a story. In my story, there is a king. So, king has got his entire setup. In that entire setup, this बहेलिया comes, और जो चिड़िया पकड़ता है वो आता है. And now from king's story we are transporting to this बहेलिया story, कि उसे कैसे बोलता हुआ तोता मिला. Now this speaking parrot is saying his own story. In his story, there is a king and a queen. Now if I am stage number 1, king is stage number 2, Baheliya is stage number 3, that talking parrot is stage number 4, and the story is of a king and a queen, which is stage number 5. That is what you saw in Inception only. How layer by layer you were going at different levels of subconscious. What structure that I have just told you is called emboxing story within a story, and it is a long used tradition in the structure of stories in Indian system. When I saw Inception and people started talking about how wonderful, how multi-layered it is, we are born, we have been taught these multi-layered things in our bedtime stories. But how much are we exploring all these stories will make the difference. If you remember when we were talking about globalization and industrialization, globalization and corporatization, that is where I talked about 4 categories, which were basically 4 variables, which was high investment, high ROI, high investment, low ROI, low investment, high ROI, and then low investment, low ROI. The winning category was low investment and high ROI, and they are experimenting with the story format also. Why did you like Bareli Ki Barfi? Why did you like Stree? Why did you like Tumbad for that matter? Why did you surprisingly like Wednesday? Why there are a lot of films, and why you rejected so many blockbusters, so-called supposed to be blockbusters? Why did you reject that? There must be an answer, that you are not only looking for story, you are looking something more than story. That is what I said in the beginning of this video, that it is not only story. Like, suppose if I say that you have been listening that story is the king. Okay, everywhere, like a lot of people are complaining that we do not have good stories, we do not have good stories. Is it only about stories that we do not have good story? If there are good story writers, they can be novelists also. But what is the difference between what is the difference of when you write a good story for cinema and why that good story is not written for novel? There has to be some difference. There has to be something which people which writers need to understand, which screenplay writer needs to understand, that if it is a good story, then it will go in the novel. Do we need actually a good story, or is it something more than the story that is required, or which is the need of the hour? Because if it is a good story, it will come out anyway. So what difference will it make in cinema? How there are a lot of films which were basically good, had good stories, but they were flop at their point when they were released. They became cult classic long after they were released. So is it like the people were not able to grasp a good story? And how do you decide whether that is a good story or not? There can be so many questions when it comes. What do you mean by good story? What qualifies as a good story? But whatever it is, whatever we will understand throughout the journey, this is certain that the ability to tell stories is fundamental to the development of any culture. Like for example, say you know, it's such an interesting process. I mean, you need to sit in class, you need to talk, you need to explain in that way that how Shravan Kumar is connected with Dashrath, and then how Dashrath is connected with he was the father, then why he said that I'll keep my promise, and then how that started, then how in Mahabharata you have a king falls in love with Ganga, she's like वो गंगा में provide करती है initial बच्चों को, उसके बाद में he stops him, that day she goes back. How even the narrator, the beauty of all these be that Alif Laila, I still remember, be that Arabian Nights, be that Mahabharata, be that Ramayana. The most striking fact about all these stories is even the narrator is the part of the entourage. Narrators, he is narrating the story, then he also come down, leaving the job of narrator and coming down and playing his part, and again going back and doing again the role of narrator. Now, I mean, whatever story structures we have not explored them. We have not explored them, to the fullest. Like suppose I was reading yesterday that, not reading, I mean, it is like a well-known fact that Indian film industry is the highest film producing industry in the world. Okay, so this is one fact. Second fact, as far as people visiting cinema hall, China is number one. Third fact, that if you talk about the revenue which is generated from the film, US though produces less number of film, but revenue wise they are far ahead of us. Now, after being the highest film producing industry in the world, our revenue is way behind at least 7 to 8 countries in the world. What is the reason? Are we technologically lagging somewhere? As far as equipment is concerned, no, we are not. Our capacity is of such kind that we can hire anything. Use, or as I always say, that we are brilliant when it comes to do the VFX work for others, but when it comes to the project manager of that VFX project, maybe that manager of that VFX project is not Indian. So vision wise, yes, I can say we really need to evolve. And then okay, this is a long conversation which can go on and on. Stories are literally being lived, told and created every second of every day whether they are made up for entertainment or recount an actual event. We'll keep on talking about it. Thank you very much.